problem. I would like to introduce
Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations Team.
Welcome to another edition of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Today's show is going to be about the Ozark Howler and the Enfield Monster. On the lines with me right now is the Mothman Poirier. And
yes, it is me.
Tim's in the chat, so he should be on here sometime.
The one and only Mr. 1.0.
Well, I don't really have a lot of news for today since we did it yesterday, but something I would say, Nick, would you like to mention what the team's up to lately for our news for today?
Well, I'll probably be moving back to Vegas in a couple months, and we really want to start getting our Ely research rolling really good. Jeremy's done a bunch of, I don't want to use this term, but I guess I'll have to use it. He's done a bunch of armchair investigating so far where he's just made a lot of calls and gone through some old newspaper articles, Project Blue Book, etc. So now we have to actually go out there and do some really hardcore field research, such as look at potential crash sites, and we want to go out there and film a documentary, so we're going to have to do some reenactments, do some in-person interviews with some of the people we talked to on the phone. We just have a lot coming up with that in the next upcoming months, along with our yearly Paratour trip, in which we're still hammering out the details, aren't we, Jer?
Yep. And on that note, I was going to say, we're also filming a Bigfoot documentary while we're out on that trip, so that should be exciting. We have some video clips from last year's trip for the year before when we actually when Tim put together a short documentary type thing. I don't know if everybody's seen that one or not.
Yeah, it was a nice little promo that Tim put together. It was really awesome.
Oh, yeah, and on top of it, there's the famous Sci-Fi Channel talks that we're going through right now.
Oh, yeah. I really might call you soon. I just had to do that.
Well, I was going to say, Nick, is there any way that you could talk about our formal unveiling idea while I type something out on our Facebook real quick?
Yeah, well, we have an idea where we want to, yet again, put together a documentary along with a good presentation or lecture of the research that we've done for the Ely UFO crash. Jeremy's been working very, very hard the past two and a half years, and I've chipped in along with the other team members with things here and there to help him out. But he's done a lot of, like I said, armchair investigating or pencil work so far, but once we hit the field, we're going to get even more information, and we're just going to put this all together into a documentary and some type of a presentation or lecture, which we want to host at some type of banquet hall or conference room at a hotel. We still haven't made our minds up yet on that, but we want to host it at a location and possibly have a dinner invite some people out, even if it's just our family and friends, but hopefully we can have more people show up to the event to just make the big premiere of the research that we've been doing on the Ely case. The amount of research that Jared's done so far, and that yet again we the other team members have chipped in on with, has uncovered so much new information that completely rewrites the understanding of this case. On the internet, the information about the case is very limited, and a lot of it's wrong. So this unveiling thing will be pretty big. I don't want to put us on this guy's level quite yet, but it's somewhat like when Stanton came out with the Roswell stuff. Somewhat, not that big, but it's somewhat similar. That's all I want to say.
Well, we have 55 minutes about left in the show, and we're going to get started with today's topics. I don't know, Nick, what do you want to start with first, Old Howley, or did you want to start off with the Enfield Monster?
I think Old Howley is probably the better topic to start off with.
All right, well, our first topic of today is the Ozark Howler. I'm going to give a quick synopsis of the Ozark Howler before we get deep into this, and here it goes. The Ozark Howler, also known as the Ozark Black Howler, is a legendary creature that's purported to live in the remote areas of Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas. Often described by witnesses as a very large cat, the Ozark Howler is said to be bigger than any huge feline species discovered, such as the lynx, bobcat, or even the cougar. Bigger than most canine breeds as well, this monster cat is said to be as huge as a typical forest bear in North America. It's very stout with a stocky body, which is supported by 6 strong legs. Instead of being covered with fur, like most typical mountain beasts, the giant cat is said to have long, shaggy hair that is as black as night. It now has horns on its head, and it says, the cry is often described as being a combination of a wolf's howl and an elk's bugle when it vocalizes. So, before we get deep into this, Nick, I was going to say, do you think that this sounds like some sort of an animal that could be living?
Definitely. Remember, I own the Ozark Howler. I'm just throwing that joke out there, guys. I put a picture of my fat black cat on my Facebook, and Jeremy called it the Ozark Howler, so that's kind of a little joke we have running around. I called my cat Old Howley.
What do you think, Tim? You think the Ozark Howler could be out there somewhere, judging by the description of it?
I think so. It's reported fairly often, too, which makes me think.
Yeah. There's a bunch of groups that frequently go out looking for the Ozark Howler, which is something I would like to note before we get deep into this also.
Hasn't Lauren Coleman looked at the Ozark Howler case before?
Nick Redfern, us, and we're in the midst of trying to get somebody to do an interview on a radio show about the Ozark Howler, too, so it should be exciting.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
I wrote, cryptozoologists have speculated that the creature might be a misidentified or unrecognized big cat. Anthropologists have speculated that the creature might be branching off of the dark dogs of death found in British folklore, which is similar to the hellhounds in North America. And on that note, I was saying, Nick, do you think that maybe this could be a spiritual animal? Almost
totally
like the hellhound, where it could be a spiritual or a cryptid, for that sense.
Well, I would venture to say it's most likely a cryptid, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to have this animal be a spiritual entity either. Or let me kind of throw another little Planet X-like theory out there, if you know what I mean. The animal could simply be an animal from a different dimension. Like I said, I think I've talked about this on the show on prior episodes, but I really like quantum physics and multiple dimensions theory and whatnot. I find it very interesting. If there are little ripples in the dimensional wall, so to say, things could cross over into our dimension very easy from a parallel universe that we're not even aware of, according to quantum theory and modern theoretical physics. But I just wanted to throw that theory out there.
Well, what I was thinking was, well, if this creature is as mysterious as people say it is, I mean, really, at this point in time, we're not really sure what it is. But there's actually been a body of one of these Ozark Howlers was caught a few years ago. I'll get to that a little bit later. Well, black cats are regarded as a sign of pure bad luck. If you see a black cat crossing your way, you ought to be wary of your plans for the day. It serves a premonition for a very unfortunate event that's going to happen. Other than symbolizing ill-fated events, black cats are often associated with witchcraft and mystery. However, the Ozark Howler takes the feline mystery and misfortune to a whole new level that presents a black cat as a cryptic beast. And I was saying the Native Americans, they say that seeing this Ozark Howler was a bad omen, or it was almost taboo to talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, then, Jared, I got a quick question.
Oh, sorry, I was going to catch Brent up on what's going on. We're talking about the Ozark
go ahead.
Howler
I got a
right
question
now,
after.
I don't know if he's there. Can you hear us, Brent?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, well, we're talking about the Ozark Howler. It's basically a giant cat, like a cougar or something is what we're talking about. But
yeah,
it's like a pure black cat, almost like a panther. And we were just saying, the Native Americans were saying that the Ozark Howler is almost like bad luck to see this creature.
Oh, okay.
What was your question, Nick?
Oh, I was going to say, you were talking about the Ozark Howler being some sort of omen. Are there any reported instances of the Ozark Howler appearing before disasters such as the Mothman?
I didn't write any down, but I did write down that several of the Native American battles, like the Indian Wars, the Native Americans seen these Ozark Howlers the night before the battle was going to take place or things like that. But other than that, I didn't really get a chance to look that deep into the mystery yet.
Oh, okay.
But I wrote, we've heard bad luck or premonition about other animals and other types of things like this before. I was going to say, Nick, is there any way you can mention a few of these for our audience?
We've talked about the Mothman, obviously, which appears before disasters, and some people say has prophetic ability or psychic ability to tell people a disaster is impending. We talked about St. Elmo's fire. Have we gone into St. Elmo's fire in the show?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay, well, I'll just say it anyway since I brought it up. St. Elmo's fire is supposed to be some ghostly entity which appears in the form of a blue flame, I believe, at sea when sailors are on a boat in the middle of a storm or some other peril. So there's another ominous entity right there. There's a lot of them almost every single paranormal creature is associated with some sort of calamity. The skinwalkers appear usually before something really bad happens. When we had that show with, what was it, Jim O'Brien or
Chris O'Brien.
Jim O'Brien's the old head coach for the Boston Celtics. You get all these O'Briens confused. O'Brien Potatoes. We had that show with Chris O'Brien, and he talked about how the skinwalker appears before disasters, and that's very chronicled in Native American folklore as well.
But, sorry, I was looking in the chat room. There's getting some messages coming in. I wrote, note that the Ozark Howler's name is derived from its troubling cries that are heard at nighttime, which echo down from the area which is commonly said to be seen, the Ozark Mountains. And aside from the creepy howl and its horns, the Ozark Howler is said to have glowing eyes which allow it to spot and perceive its prey from a distance. And the monster cat is said to feed on smaller animals in the woodlands as well as livestock and from the from the nearby farm communities. And I was thinking, this animal is said to be nocturnal. So do you think that, like most large predators, a lot of them at least, they hunt at nighttime, or these animals sort of, like, they're nocturnal, I guess what I'm trying to say. You agree with this, Nick, or?
Yeah, I think it's fairly consistent with what we know about other animals. Plus, the Ozark Howler's coat is black, it's jet black, so what better adaptation to have to hunt at night than jet black fur?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Brent?
Not at the moment. Right now, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts.
He's playing some pogo right now. You have to give him some time to play pogo.
Well, what I was going to say was the Ozark Howler. How would this animal, if it's that big, be able to live so long unnoticed?
How long has it been living for, supposedly? Sorry, Nick.
That's okay, Brent. That's a good question.
Oh, what do you say?
Oh, I said how long has it been alive, supposedly?
Well, the Native Americans were talking about it in ancient times. And then even till modern day times, I guess there's a bunch of groups that go looking for it, and they get pictures of it and cats and things. Like when we look for Bigfoot and things like that, they get evidence of the Ozark Howler. So I don't know, I think it's something interesting that I would want to eventually investigate. But if we really did find one and it wanted to turn on us, I don't really think there'd be any chance to get away.
Is that here in the U.S. or is that
Oh yeah, that's here in like Oklahoma, Texas area.
Okay.
I wrote witnesses noticed it had glowing eyes, which is another trait of nocturnal animals. But all right, we're getting this on Facebook. It says they want me to mention the chupacabra story. I wrote, the first mistaken as the chupacabra, biologists are now focusing on the Ozark Howler identification. Texas rancher Devin McNally said that he doesn't know what the animal is called, but reports that it's been attacking his chickens, a pattern of behavior consistent with cat-like behavior, but at odds with the chupacabra, which has always been reported to attack goats and other livestock. Of course, the Eastern Cougar Research segment of Ozark Howler researchers is struggling to incorporate this physical specimen of the Ozark Howler into their theories of the Ozark Howler. Obviously, as this juvenile Ozark Howler corpse demonstrates, the Ozark Howler is an unknown carnivore that is neither a bear or a cat or not even a dog, but something different. And basically what that is, for those of you who don't know, apparently there was a body of a chupacabra that was shot in eastern Texas a few years back. And this guy's saying that he thinks that it's the Ozark Howler, and same with some other people. Judging by the picture, I mean, do you, like Tim and Brent, do you guys think that this could be, do you think that could be the Ozark Howler, or do you think you still stick with the chupacabra theory?
I think it'd be the Ozark Howler myself.
What do you think, Brent?
I don't know. It could be the Ozark Howler. I'd have to listen to a couple more stories or some more information on it.
Well, Jer, this is something that just popped up on my mind. If the chupacabra or the Ozark Howler can be misidentified as a chupacabra, wouldn't perhaps a Sasquatch call be misidentified as a Ozark howling call, or vice versa?
I never thought of that. I guess it really could, depending on how. I mean, of course, you wouldn't know what an Ozark Howler call sounds like unless you heard it. But I mean, for the most part, yeah, I could see that. So.
Hey, Jeremy, you mind if I kind of throw? It's not really on topic. Mind if I throw something out there?
What?
So I was looking online and randomly I found the Mad Guesser of Mattoon. I randomly found a collector's card. There's like a trading card set with them on it.
Now, looks like we have something for our shopping list.
I showed Jeremy the link. Let me know what you think, Jeremy. See it.
It's cool looking. Well, I have an Ozark Howler sighting story I was going to say. Last year around New Year's, I was driving home from a party, and I was going around this curve, which is really tight, especially at nighttime. If you know what I mean, sorry, I skipped along. I saw this big thing run across the road right in front of me as he was going around this corner in the headlight. I didn't see a whole lot, but one thing I did notice that it was big, long, thick tail. At first, I thought it was a bear, but then I thought, do bears really have big, long tails? I couldn't remember for a while, but then I remembered that they don't. Then I was pretty confused and a little scared, so then I just started my car right up and drove back home. And this was the next day. When I was a little bit sobered up from the party, I went back to the curve on the road and looked for where I'd pulled off the road the night before. I found the ruts that the car had made in the shoulder pretty easily, but what really surprised me was that there was a few other things there in the snow, too. It looked like blood of where a carcass was laying in big, giant paw prints. I went back to town and got a friend of mine who does wallpapering carpentry work, and then when he's not an on-duty fireman, I guess he's a fireman and a carpenter apparently, and he came out with me and took this picture of one of the paw prints. We were going to try to take a plaster cast, but when it got warm, the prints melted before we could figure out what was going to happen with it. Sorry if I jumped around. I'm just trying to decipher the way that guy's typing was. So this guy was driving home from work, or a party, sorry, and he sees this strange, almost looks like a panther run across the road. And he comes back the next day, and there's blood, like a carcass was there, in these giant cat prints. What's your take on that, Nick?
Well, at first, when I hear that sighting, it reminds me a lot of the black panther or black cat sightings that occur on the eastern coast of the United States and also within Great Britain. I'd just like to throw that out there. And also reminds me a lot of an experience I had as a kid when I saw a large cat-like or wolf, I don't know what it was, this large, it looked like a panther, probably the best way to say it. I was playing in the front yard when I was a kid, and I lived on a back road, not a dirt road. But I was playing in the front yard, and I looked down the street, and this large black cat, this panther-like creature ran into the woods, and I ran down to go see what had happened. And I looked in the woods, and there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. So it also, brings back some memories for me. So I believe this story is entirely plausible. I think that this story is very possible and probably is true if they got a footprint of it.
Yeah.
It corroborates along. They have some visual evidence or tangible evidence to go along with the eyewitness testimony. So the story has a lot of credibility, in my opinion.
So do you think that what you've seen might have been an Ozark Howler, but in a different part of the country?
Possibly. And I was talking to the Sci-Fi Channel guy, and I told him that story, telling him that it was similar sounding to also the hellhound of El Dorado Canyon in northern Nevada, which he's talking to us about. And earlier in the show, we said that the Ozark Howler is very similar to the hellhound as well. So all these stories kind of connect with each other somehow, which is kind of weird but fascinating at the same time.
Yeah. I have a few weird remarks off of this website. They're talking about Ozark Howler juveniles or young. I wrote, unlike the adult Ozark Howler, you are a staple of Ozark Howler folklore. Unlike an adult Ozark Howler, who are a staple of Ozark folklore due to their distinctive vocalizations, juvenile Ozark Howlers are rarely sighted. Indeed, the only sightings of the young are with the adult Ozark Howlers, presumably their parents. And before we go on, I was going to say this is a trait that you see often in the wild. That the young stay with the adults until they get old enough, I guess. Almost like a human being, too. But
yeah.
The lack of prominent vocalizations, the howl of the Ozark Howler, a lot of people are saying that they think that the young don't howl like the older ones do, is what this guy's saying. Because maybe it's because it could be part of a reproduction ritual, like a mating call, or maybe because the howl is part of hunting behavior, is what this guy's saying. That's why we never hear about the young ones howling or doing things like that. He's saying basically they have no reason to howl.
Mm.
So what do you guys think?
Well, makes sense from a... Sorry, Brett.
Oh, no, go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, I was going to say, it makes perfect sense from an ecological or zoological standpoint, because the young of many predators don't hunt, and they don't know how to hunt, so they don't do the behavior that's associated with hunting. So it just makes perfect sense that they wouldn't howl if it's part of hunting or mating, because young juvenile animals of any species don't mate. So I'm just saying it makes perfect sense. It's very simple, actually, if you think about it.
I was
going to say, Tim, do you have any thoughts on the Ozark Howler real quick before we go to a commercial and go on to our other topic?
I mean, well, we're talking in the chat room. I'm still kind of mixed, whether it's like a spiritual creature, you know what I mean, or like a actual cryptid itself.
Yeah.
Like, it was brought up earlier that someone else was thinking it could be like from a different dimension, much as Nick was talking about earlier.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. I'm still stuck between the two, but it sounds like it's a very real creature, though.
So as a final thought, if we went on a trip to Oklahoma and Texas, would you go look for the Ozark Howler, Brent?
If what?
If we went on a trip to that part of the country, would you go look for the Ozark Howler?
Yeah. Yeah, I would.
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, we'd have to go look for it. Then we'd have to stop by and pay a visit to Big Red.
We'd have to. She's not on the chat room today for some reason.
Oh.
We're going to go on a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to go on to our other topic of the hour. And you're listening to Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio.
the humans about to escape.
Get your paws off me, you dirty ape!
He can talk. 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 He can talk.
I can sing!
Ooh, help me, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Oh, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
What's wrong with me?
I think you're crazy.
Want a second opinion?
You're also lazy.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
And we're back on Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. We're going to go on to our second topic of the hour, the Enfield Monster. I guess this is more of a mid-USA type creature. Most people on the West Coast don't really know about this, but it's seen in Enfield, Illinois, and the creature is reported as being 4 to 5 feet tall and having a large gray body, looking almost like a pile of living mud. Its eyes are purported to be large and reddish pink in color. It was said to walk on 3 short legs and have 2 short arms protruding out of the chest area of its body. Before we go on, what's your initial opinions on this for my panel?
Well, I don't know. Sounds like a mud monster.
What do you think, Nick and Brent?
I don't. A giant 4-foot-tall mud monster with small protruding arms in its chest. Sounds comical, but there are a lot of eyewitness reports and maybe some evidence even for it, so I'll have an open mind as we explore the topic.
You have any idea, Brent? Or I'll just go on if Brent's doing something. But this creature was sighted at nighttime, and twice it was trying to attract the attention of a homeowner. This is just like some random statistics. By making scratching sounds on the outside of the doors and walls of some of these houses. And when the homeowner opened the door, the creature stood there looking at him, then fled away into the woods hissing. It was almost purported to have been shot by a group of men searching for it, and when the shot seemed to unharm the beast as it fled at speed greater than a human could move. And at the time of the sighting, the one I was just telling you about, there was a large number of UFO reports in the same area. So I have a few questions on this little quick thing I mentioned. Why is this creature immune to bullets, Nick?
Well, its physiological makeup being consistent with mud would make it totally. I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together here with this thing. Basically, its body is made up in such a way that makes it invincible to bullets. I don't know what type of anatomy that this creature has, but somehow it being made of mud or slime or sludge, whatever it's supposed to be made out of, makes it invincible to bullets.
I was going to say, I'm going to get more into detail on that report here in a minute. I know with Bigfoot shot at a few times, it seems like the bullets don't really hurt it. Or if it does, we don't know because it gets away too quick. But why was it trying to get into the house, do you think?
I don't know.
Was it trying to keep the people? Did it want to get out of the environment? Or like, what's your take on this?
Well, if there are UFOs sighted in the area, perhaps the aliens released it to scare the human beings or to study the human beings. Well, I'm going to draw on a pop culture reference from an old horror movie I watched where some aliens send these giant blobs down to Earth in order to study how the humans behave and what they eat and et cetera. They send these blobs to just go down and study the humans to prepare the Earth for an invasion. So maybe monster was kind of a Trojan horse, so to say, sent in by the aliens that were spotted in the area.
It's alive! It's alive!
Exactly. But I guess that's my best theory to go along with what we know, is that this creature was sent as a Trojan horse probably is the best term to use, from the aliens that were seen in the area, along with the sightings of the creature.
So you're saying that you think it's an alien, right? You don't think it's more like a creature from Earth in that sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to say it's extraterrestrial, yeah.
What do you say, Brent? You think it's an alien, or do you think it's an animal?
I don't know. To me, it seems like it's some kind of alien, I guess. Kind of hard to judge that.
Well, the area is the location of one of the most thickest and unsearched woodland areas in the country, called the Shawnee National Forest. The state is also native to home to at least 5 Native American tribes. The Indians said the area was very spiritual. They often reported visitors from the skies and other worlds, such as glowing and moving orbs of light, terrifying sounds at night, and also creature sightings. Every white settler used to say that the area was also cursed by the Indians. So I wrote, the Indians noted that there was creatures in the area and that they put a curse on this land. And with the thick forest, something like this may be able to hide out. May be able to. But you figure if the Indians were reported saying it, maybe it could be real. I don't know. But do you think maybe it could be from the curse? The Indians' curse, maybe? Like some people think?
Yeah, it could be.
What do you think, Tim? You've been kind of quiet.
Well, I don't know. It sounds really odd, but it just sounds like I don't know. Maybe it could be some sort of an alien creature. I know that's a popular theory going around on the internet and everything.
But we're saying, do you think the curse has anything to do with the creature? Is what we're saying?
Well, I mean, it probably could, because maybe, there are a lot of Indian curses where they say the land's cursed after they say it, so it could be. It's probably related with the curse.
Well, some people say that the Mothman was cited due to a curse that Chief Cornstalk, an Indian of the area, something that he conjured up. So I was thinking maybe one of the Indians may have conjured up the Enfield Monster, maybe. But
you know what would be perfectly timed? Oh, sorry. I was just saying, if somebody prank called us right now and said, "What are you guys talking about, a Pokemon?" that would be very perfectly timed. Was there a Pokemon that was a pile of sludge with little arms?
Yeah.
I don't know, just
captured him as a level 27.
Yeah. Ben loves his sludge monster Pokemon.
But I wrote, the bizarre string of events. So here's like some of the sightings. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. The bizarre string of events that would eventually steer the small town of Enfield, Illinois, into a frenzy of fear began on the night of April 25th, 1973, when a young boy named Greg Garrett claimed to have been attacked by a truly bizarre beast while playing in his backyard. The child described the being as having at no less than 3 legs, a grayish, slimy epidermis, short claws, and reddish eyes. The creature apparently stomped on the boy's feet with its own 3 apparently clawed foot-like appendages, tearing his tennis shoes into shreds. Greg, crying hysterically, wasted no time scurrying away into the house and into the safety of his room. So before I'd like to mention, before you guys say anything, apparently the police took the shoes, photographed them, and this was in the local news at the time. And notice, he didn't say that the creature was a pile of slime. He just said it had a slimy texture to it.
And that could open up a whole new door right there. I mean, salamanders and frogs have slimy skin, but they're not walking piles of slime, so
yeah.
You could have similar characteristics to a frog or a salamander, perhaps.
Well, because, yeah, like I was saying, it's kind of weird how some people report it as a giant pile of slime, but in this story, the very first sighting, he said that it was almost like a normal, just like a human being or like an animal on 4 legs, that just slimy is what he said. Well, I guess it wouldn't be a normal animal, of course, but...
Yeah. But that just
what would you do, Brent, if it stepped on your shoes and tore your shoes up?
I don't know. I'd be distraught.
No, but you'd be pissed.
All right, but and notice though the creature wasn't really afraid of the kid. It just kind of ran off. You know what I mean? It wasn't really afraid of him, but at the same time didn't want to stick around and kind of see what he was going to do or what he was all about.
Yeah, maybe he startled him or scared him.
So I wrote, here's another story. I wrote, this is the most famous story of the Enfield Monster. It says, the story that brought this creature notoriety came a half hour later from the one I just told you about, when the Garrett's neighbor, Henry McDaniel, and his family had a face-to-face encounter with this unbelievable entity. At about 9:30 in the evening, the McDaniels returned home to find 2 of their children, Henry Jr. and Lil, in a terrified stupor. The children claimed that the thing had tried to break into the house through the door and the window-mounting air conditioner. And it says, while their parents were gone, it was said that they all heard scratching all around the front door and the front of the house. Assuming it was some sort of stray animal, Henry approached the door and yanked it open. There, standing in front of him, was the same red-eyed monstrosity that terrified his own children. Sorry, let me back up for a minute. The parents got home and the kids told the father. The father yanked open the door and the creature was standing there. It says he grabbed a flashlight and his .22 pistol and apparently he shot the creature. So he said he hit it immediately when he shot at it, but instead of falling to the ground wounded or dead, the horrible thing merely hissed like a cat, and it says it ran off into the forest. But he said it had 3 legs, a short body, 2 little short arms coming from its breast area, and 2 pink eyes as big as the flashlight he had in his hand. And it stood 4.5 feet tall and was gray-colored, he said. But again, he never said that the creature was a pile of slime.
Yeah.
He said, word for word, that it was a 3-legged creature standing like a person would. So, if you look at the drawings of this creature, it's a little off topic. If you look at the way the creature's drawn, like by eyewitnesses, it doesn't look like a pile of slime. It kind of looks like a giant potato with arms and legs, if you ask me. But what do you think, Brent? Why do you think the creature wasn't affected by the bullet?
I don't know. Maybe
you think it was too small of a caliber for that big of an animal?
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, 22. I was going to say that the immediate answer is a 22 bullet sometimes doesn't stop a human being, never mind a freak monster from space. I don't know. But, yeah, a 22 isn't that strong of a bullet. It's just basically a step above a BB gun.
But again, though, this creature, it was not reported as a giant pile of slime. I think that's a good point to get across because the creature doesn't sound so fairy-like or like fantasy hearing that sort of description of it versus a giant pile of slime, you know?
Yeah, hey, Joe, I got there's a theory right now going on in the term from Mustang Sally. I'm reading her post that she says maybe it was wet when someone said it was actually slime, you know?
That's what I was going to say. Why do you think it's wet or slimy?
Well, it could live in the ground first off, or, like I said earlier, perhaps it's an amphibian, like a salamander or a frog, and it would have slimy skin.
Or got slimed by Nickelodeon.
Exactly.
But Brent, why do you think that? Do you think that, like Nick was saying, maybe it's an amphibian, or do you think maybe just an alien or some sort?
Well, I mean, in the sighting, was this like in the forest, or was this like in a suburb area?
It's in their house borders the forest in Illinois.
Well, I mean, there could have been like a nearby creek or stream or something, and could have came out of that. Could have been wet from being in the stream or something. I don't know. Or it could just be like what Nick was saying, and a type of amphibian.
I think that's probably what it is, some kind of a weird amphibian. All right, so I wrote, McDaniels promptly called the local authorities, but when the Illinois State Troopers who responded to the call arrived at the scene, the only evidence of the encounter remained was a series of scratches on the siding of the home and dog-like prints in the yard. What made the prints so unusual was the fact that they had 6 toe pads, and more intriguingly, that they represented a 3-footed animal, while one track was slightly smaller than the other 2. And a few questions I wrote about this. I wrote, obviously it made the local news, so it was important enough to do that. It was that strange. And I wrote, the police thought that this was strange enough to photograph them and take it seriously. And we know from our experience with UFOs and things like that, that doesn't happen very often. So, you want to take a stab at that, Nick?
Yeah. Well, yeah, the fact that the police took it seriously is quite telling, because most ordinary people won't take you seriously if you bring up anything paranormal, never mind a government official such as a police officer. And the footprints do sound weird. That's probably the best word I can use to describe it. The other day, I was actually taking a walk out in the little nature preserve area by my house, and there was a weird footprint that kind of sounded like that. Like it was probably a something that, was weathered down, so it looked weird, but it looked like a deer hoof, but at the same time it curved like a human's foot would. It was weird. But yeah, if they found tracks for the thing that doesn't match any known animal, then that's pretty telling right there.
Well, here's the other thing. Do you think maybe there was 3 footprints, maybe because there was 2 animals and not 1?
Possibly.
Well, it could be possible, but how many feet would an individual animal have? 1.5? I don't know.
I don't think maybe like, I don't know, but why was the 1 foot smaller than the other 2?
Hey, that does sound bizarre.
I think maybe it could have been like a tail or something?
Yeah. Again, this animal is not a known animal in modern science, so its anatomy and physiology is something we can only barely speculate on, especially since there hasn't been a great deal of study into it, or if there has, I don't think there's been a lot of evidence found for this animal, except maybe the occasional set of footprints and eyewitness accounts. But
well, do you think
I really can't.
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
So I really can't answer why 1 foot would be smaller than the other. I don't see the evolutionary advantage to that, but
they said that it was. So one person said it was grayish in color, like a light gray with pink eyes. You think maybe it could have been something albino of whatever it was?
Potentially. If it was an albino, there's another reason why it could be wet, because maybe it lives underground. And animals that live underground typically are either white or very, very, very pale, and they have large eyes like that. So
it could
live underground, which, yeah. So
even though we know that's in the deep sea, though, of course.
He's in the deep sea in the middle of Illinois, but yeah, it could live underground, which would make sense with the animal's physiology that's described by the eyewitnesses.
Well, a question that's coming from the chat. It says, why was its eye so big? You think because, like you said, it has low light underground?
Yeah, I think that's the most plausible answer, that this creature lives underground and it needs its large eyes to take in as much light as it can to see.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wrote, if McDaniel, who's the guy who shot the creature, believed that his encounters with the unknown were a thing of the past, he would soon realize that he was sadly mistaken. Because on May 6th of 1973, he was startled awake from the dead of night by a howling of some of the neighborhood dogs. I guess he got out of bed, he said, and grabbed his gun again, and he opened the front door. This time, he said he'd seen the creature again, but this time he says it was from a distance, and he says it was walking along the railroad tracks near his home. And his exact words, quoted, he says, I saw something moving on the railroad track, and there it stood. I didn't shoot at it or anything. It just was walking down the railroad track. It wasn't in a hurry or anything, is what he said. And it wasn't bothering the neighborhood dogs either, is what he said. So.
Well, I'll go ahead, Jerry.
I was saying, this time it seemed like it was just trying to leave everybody alone and want to do its own thing, is what I was thinking.
Well, I was going to say, I'll play skeptic's advocate for 1 second and say, well, if this guy had 2 sightings of the same creature, plus the footprints found at the scene of one of the sightings don't really make sense, perhaps it's a hoax. Maybe he put the footprints there and was very sloppy and didn't realize that one footprint was smaller than the others.
Could be, but the thing I was thinking is maybe he just lives by his house.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just throwing out that possibility out there as well.
You think it could be a hoax, Brent, or do you think it looks like it might be a real animal?
To me, I don't know. To me, it seems kind of like a hoax.
Mm-hmm. You think so, Tim, or you think it's an animal?
I don't know. I'm 50-50, but I believe if it is real, it's like Nick said, maybe some sort of like amphibian or something. It looks like slimy or wet.
I wrote, Lauren Coleman wrote a book on the Enfield Monster like a year ago, and he said that it's still seen today in his dozens of reports of this animal. And apparently, if he thought, like the police, if he thought it was important enough to take a trip across country to see it, maybe there's something interesting about this. So, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, the thing is, I don't know enough information about this creature to really give a detailed analysis of it. But if Lauren Coleman thinks that it's worth taking a look at, I suppose I could say it's worth taking a look at as well.
Well, that book, I was actually thinking of buying that book for myself once I found out about that. What do you think, Brent? Do you think if Lauren Coleman thinks it's interesting enough, or if he wrote a book on how many sightings are about this creature, maybe it's worth digging into?
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, I'd want to read the book, but I mean, if he's looking into it, then I mean, come on, might as well.
Well, This is one of Lauren Coleman's things. He wrote, other investigators have suggested that the monster was associated with a spat of UFO sightings that plagued the region when the creature was first sighted. And some people say that there's a more supernatural assertion to the beast, with its tendency to be aggressive toward humans and try to break into their homes. He says he thinks that some people say it's a classic demon attack or like some sort of a poltergeist is what he says. That's one of his theories on it. What do you think, Nick?
It could be an imp or some other type of demonic entity or poltergeist. That's definitely within the realm of possibility. Or I'll throw out my theory that I threw out in the beginning of the show for the Ozark Howler. Perhaps it's from another dimension which we don't understand and probably don't even know about.
Well, I'm still kind of wondering, if it was an animal, why was it trying to get into those people's houses so bad?
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know what this thing would eat, but would this thing really be a predator? Or do you think that's a question, Nick. I know there's no evidence to support this, but what do you think a creature like this would eat?
Well, if it's amphibious and lives in the ground, it'd probably have to eat anything from insects to perhaps even rodents that burrow in the ground, maybe fish or small birds, or maybe even it could be a vegetarian, perhaps. If there's a lot of vegetation in the area, it definitely could be a vegetarian and just eat the local plants that are in the area.
Well, what do you think it would eat, Brent?
I don't know, to be honest.
It would eat corn pops.
Yeah.
But anyways, we have about 2 minutes left in the show. We are going to end the show here a little bit early, I guess 2 minutes early. But before we end the show, I was going to say, next Saturday we're going to have a show on an endless, bottomless pit called Mel's Hole in Washington State. And we're also going to be talking about future BFP updates and things like that. But another thing, we're probably going to start hosting a second show every week, like 2 shows a week, but we're kind of unsure when the second show is going to be because we don't really have a dedicated date for that. But tune in next Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific for the all-new episode. And also, for today's show, I'd like to thank all of the callers, all my co-hosts, and I would like to thank anyone that contributed to the show. And I'm going to let my co-hosts say their goodbyes.
Everybody have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
All right, bye.
All right, and again, thanks to everybody for listening to an all-new episode of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio.
And gentlemen, it seems we have a problem. I would like to introduce
Bigfoots Pad Paranormal